They are irritating, they are annoying, and they are ubiquitous. That's nerd for everywhere. Today we're on the trail of poisonous plants. So most people are familiar with the fact that here in the southeastern United States, we have lots and lots of snakes, and many of them are venomous. The copperhead, the cottonmouth, all that kind of stuff. What they don't realize is that we also have toxic trees. Actually, they're not really toxic trees, but the genus name for this particular group of plants that are poisonous is called toxicodendron. Toxicodendron literally means toxic or poisonous trees. So what are those plants? Well, there's 3 of them that belong to that genus. There's poison ivy, there's poison oak, and there's poison sumac. And then there's another one that we will deal with called Nidoscolus. That's its genus. That means stinging thorn. Nidoscolus. We will deal with that one also. So there's 4 plants that we're going to talk about today. These cause extreme rashes, itching, and all kinds of irritations like that. So come on, let's go find some. So poison ivy is the most common of these toxic trees, these toxicodendrons that we have here in the United States. You can recognize it right here. And if you remember the rhyme that everyone knows, right? Leaves of 3, don't touch me, or leaves of 3, let it be. Either way, you can remember how to recognize this. Now, other things have 3 leaves, and we're going to be talking about those. Don't worry about that. But the way you recognize these 3, first of all, little technicality, this technically is 1 leaf. Poison ivy has a compound leaf with 3 leaflets. These 2 side leaflets right here, notice that they have an entire front edge. Entire means that it's smooth. There's no serrations, there's no lobes. It's fairly smooth. Every now and then you get some variation. For the most part, that's nice and smooth. The back edge has these little pointed lobes on it, like that. Same thing on this side. Notice that the center leaflet here is symmetrical. It has lobes on both sides. Now, once you have that, and then you look at the stem, and you see that the stem, right here at the base of the stem, is red. It's nice and red right there. And it's also red right here in the center where the leaflets come off. So you have red here, and you have red down here where the leaf itself attaches to the vine. Remember, it's an ivy, so it's a vine. It will oftentimes grow on the ground like this, all right, like small little shrubs and small little plants, but more often than not, it's climbing up a tree. Let's go look at what the vine itself looks like as it's climbing that tree. Okay, so here is a really mature poison ivy vine, and you can see it is totally covered with those fine hairs. Completely covered with those fine hairs all up and down here. That's what you can recognize. Sometimes these vines can be as big as my arm. And here we can see that even the small young vines are covered with little tiny hairs. Now here we have a whole bunch of lookalikes. We've got this one right here. Now this particular one actually will cause a reaction in some people. This is called Virginia creeper. Notice that it has 5 leaflets here. It does have that red center, real tiny red center right there. You can see that red. Underneath you can see it even better right there. And it will grow as a vine. It will grow up on trees. The vine is not hairy the way that the poison ivy vine is. So some people will react to this. Most people do not. Notice that the leaflets are lobed on all sides. Now, when Virginia creeper is young, when this particular plant is young, oftentimes it will only have the 3 leaflets. So if you look at the whole vine, you will see that oftentimes you'll begin to see that same vine sprouting 5 leaflets as those leaves mature. Okay, but the young vine oftentimes will only do 3, but they're always serrated on both sides. Here we can see a Virginia creeper vine that's going at the side of a tree. Couple things to notice. Number one, as I said before, you can see sometimes these young leaves have these 3 leaflets that are on them. You can see those 3 out there, but the mature ones, they have 5, okay? Also notice, as I pull a little bit of this off, now you can see the vine itself completely unhairy, nice and smooth, no fuzzy stuff coming off of it. That's Virginia creeper. Now next to that, growing right here, this is a grapevine. It does grow as a vine, so some people see it and they freak out a little bit, but you can see the leaves are very different. They're almost heart-shaped. They're serrated on both sides. They do have something of a red stem. You can kind of see that right there, a little bit of red, but heart-shaped, lobed on both sides. There's no 3s. Each leaf is a single leaf, not a compound. It's a simple one. So there we go with that one. So these are 2 of the real common vines and things that are mistaken for poison ivy. And here's yet another lookalike. This is young blackberry. Let's see here. Ow. 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 Okay. You notice the owls? Thorns. They have thorns on them. Okay, that's why. Remember, poison ivy, no thorns. So you can see it still has the 3 leaves of 3 right here. Notice that these front parts are a little bit less lobed than the back parts, so it has that familiar look. But if you look on the back, there's no red on this leaf at all, and it's covered with thorns. Remember, thorns, poison ivy, no thorns. All right, so this is young blackberry. When this matures, it'll have 5 leaves on it, and not it'll have a cluster of 5 leaves, not the 3. Okay, so here, right there, is poison oak. And you can recognize it. Let me get that out of the way. You can recognize it. It has those leaves, the leaves of 3, don't touch me, right? Just like poison ivy. It's got the red stem in the middle. Can you guys see that reddish stem right there, right in the middle, in between the leaves and the leaflet, or the leaflets? I'll try to get it out of the way without really trying to touch it. I don't react to this, which is good. So I can touch it with a fair amount of safety. Wouldn't recommend it though. If you don't know if you react, don't find out. Okay, it's not worth it. So you can notice this is very similar to the poison ivy, but notice that the leaves are much more rounded. They're more lobed. They're not as pointy as the poison ivy. It's also not vining up the tree. It's not taking off and crawling up the tree. These grow more low to the ground. It's a much rarer plant. It's not as easy to find as poison ivy, even here in the south. I had to hike out here kind of in the middle of nowhere to try to find this. But this is an example of it. So the leaves, the center leaflet is still symmetrical to itself. You can see that right here. The side leaflets oftentimes are smooth on that inside edge, symmetrical to each other. But you can see, in this case, even this one's lobed. So much more rounded, low growing, still has the leaves of 3, symmetrical, the center leaflet's symmetrical, outer leaflets symmetrical to themselves, to each other, and reddish in the middle. That still is that common characteristic that you find with these toxicodendrons, that red stem. So check this out. This is very similar to poison oak, and it's actually where poison oak gets its name. This is an oak. And you can see it has those similar lobed leaves that we saw on the poison oak, but notice that they're all growing kind of around that central stem. They're not in a cluster of 3. They're all individual leaves all growing around the central stem. So this is not poison oak, this is oak, normal oak, non-poison oak. Come back in 100 years, yeah, it's really big. Won't look like poison oak at all. So as hard as I've tried to show you the different poisonous plants that we have here in Alabama, I have been unable to find poison sumac. I suppose that's a good thing, right? That means it's really not around. It's not that common. It is registered that it is here in the state, but I cannot find any. I did find two of its cousins, the winged sumac and the smooth sumac, that look very, very much like the poison sumac. So at least let me show you those so you kind of have a sense of what you're looking at. Come on, they're over here. So this is one of the cousins of poison sumac. And as you can see, this is called smooth sumac. And you can see it has that nice red stem going right down the middle, being between the leaflets. These leaflets are, now these right here, if you look really close, these leaflets are serrated. They have those little jagged edges. Poison sumac, the leaflets are not serrated. The leaflets are wavy to entire. Entire means smooth, or a little bit of a wave to them. So that's the poison sumac. So this is smooth sumac, but it grows very similar. Grows tall like a shrub, has kind of a grayish stem, a nice smooth petiole right there in between the leaflets. And everything, but it doesn't have those serrated edges. So this is the smooth, looks almost exactly like the poison sumac, except for the fact it lacks that smooth edge. It lacks that smooth edge. That's it. Also, these leaflets are much pointier in the smooth or in the poison sumac. They're a little bit more ovate, kind of thicker here in the middle. They're kind of thicker here in the middle, and then they kind of taper to a point, maybe not quite as long as these. So this is the smooth sumac, very similar to the poison sumac. And here's the other look-alike. This is winged sumac. Again, grows like a shrub, even to a small tree. All these plants can get to be 15, 20 feet high. They're really, really big plants. Although many times you can find them growing like a shrub on the ground. So this one, the winged sumac, you can see it has a little bit of that red here in the petiole, but notice here, along that middle stem right in here, notice the wings. The stem has these little tiny leaflets right there that grow along the stem, and that's what gives this plant the name, the winged sumac. So again, very, very similar to the poison sumac, grows in similar kind of habitats, although the smooth and the winged sumac can grow more scrubby areas, disturbed roadsides. The poison sumac really enjoys staying in the swampy areas, real heavy clays that trap a lot of moisture. That's really what they love. But again, I can't find any, so that's a good thing. So you might have noticed I'm out here looking for the toxicodendrons, the poison trees, and yet I'm wearing short sleeves, no gloves, I got short pants on. And you might be thinking, what's up with that? Well, interestingly enough, the ability to react or not react severely or even mildly to poison ivy is a genetic condition. That's right. You can have the dominant traits or the recessive traits, but ultimately you can be immune to it if you have the proper genetics. And I do, so I thank you, Mom, I thank you, Dad, for giving me the proper genetics. I don't react to this. The chemical that's actually in there that everyone is reacting to is called urushiol. And urushiol is common in all three of those plants: poison oak, poison ivy, and poison sumac. The next plant, the nidoscolis, the stinging thorn, that has a different set of chemistry, which is part of the reason it's in a different genus. Let's go check that one out now. Okay, now here is a plant that's really, really, really nasty. Remember, I made the comment that I don't necessarily react to all the toxicodendrons, all the urushiol, but this plant will light me up. This is the nidoscolis, which means stinging thorn. This is it right here. And you can recognize it. It has these really pointy leaves, oftentimes lobed into 3 or 5 lobes. You can see this one has like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. The smaller ones only have 3. So you can see it's got those lobes. The whole plant is covered with little tiny fine hairs. I'm not going to pick it up to show you. I'll try to get the camera and zoom in just a minute so you can get a close-up view of it. I'll edit that in so you can check it out. The petals, there's actually no petals on this plant. The little white flowers you're seeing are actually the sepals of the plant that simply turn white. There's 5 of them, and this thing right here, oh man, it's got a cocktail of things, of chemicals, that when those little hairs come in contact with you, man, it's like a dozen scorpions stinging your hand. It just burns for like half an hour. It's miserable. So this is the one, Nitoscoles, grows in real dry areas, scrubby areas. You find it a lot around beach dunes and things like that. Anywhere where it's dry and rocky and doesn't have a lot of rich soil, sandy soil, those are the areas where it grows in really, really well. So pointy leaves, 3 to 4 lobes, like this, or 3 to 5 lobes, like this one down here. Little tiny white flowers, and the whole plant is covered with hairs. Nitoscoles, spurge nettle is the common name for this plant. Oh, it is wicked. Put it on definitely your do not touch list. That's one, do not touch. So I've talked a lot about the poisonous plants, but I haven't talked about the good ones. There is a plant called jewelweed. This plant right here. This is jewelweed. You can see it has nice kind of pointed leaves, softly rounded edges. These leaves come off, well, kind of on a random pattern. I'm gonna go ahead and pick this up. It's got these beautiful red roots here. It's starting to rain, I gotta hurry. It's got all this, you can kind of see the pattern for it. This grows in wet areas. It has a roundish stem, kind of a translucent green, has some pink in there, some red. Here's the cool thing. If you break the stem of this plant, you'll see it's got all of this gooey, icky, sticky stuff. This plant is a natural antidote for poison ivy. I've even used it on bee stings, and it still helps to take the fire out of them. So this is jewelweed, grows. You can see my wet, sticky fingers. Maybe you can't really see them that well, but there they are, wet and sticky. All right, jewelweed has these soft, rounded, reddish stems, real gentle plant. That is jewelweed. And if you ever get stung or bitten or get into poison ivy, some people, small number, possibly have a reaction to this. Most people don't. The Native Americans used it. The early pioneers used it. Jewelweed, great plant to know. Natural antidote to poison ivy, to spurge nettle, all that stuff, even bee stings. Good stuff. So poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac, and the spurge nettle. These are very toxic trees, poisonous plants that we have here in the Alabama area. Keep your eyes out for them. Remember the ones that can help you, like jewelweed. Remember the lookalikes that don't harm you at all. But always keep an eye out for those things. Keep your eyes open, be aware of what's going on around you, and you can spend your time out here on the trail in safety. I'm Gregg Thompson. I'll see you on the trail.